In this case, she should be simply following the strategy, the velocity banking strategy. And I know it seems difficult. You're telling me all $7,000 is supposed to go on to this line of credit? And that's exactly what I'm saying. When we talk about what type of debt tool you should get or what type of debt tool you should use, there are many. There are many different types. And I leave these blank intentionally because there may be debt tools that I'm not even aware of. For instance, I think I was on a call and a gentleman mentioned that he leverages his stock portfolio. And I'll give you an example because I've done this before. I've done this in the past as well, but it didn't even dawn on me that I could leverage this and use this as a debt tool. And what I mean is I had I'll get a quick example. I've got a fair amount of Amazon stock. And because I have a fair amount of Amazon stock with Morgan Stanley, they allow me to take out lines of credit against my stock. So my stock never moves. My stock never, I'll call it, converts over to dollars. I am simply getting a loan, a line of credit from Morgan Stanley, and I'm able to use that for whatever I want. Is it open-ended? Not necessarily. But when I get that line of credit, and if I was to transfer it into my checking account, I can use it as a debt tool as it relates to velocity banking. So my point is, there are many different types. Today, we are talking about a home equity line of credit, but there are many different types, and there may even be some that I haven't even identified. So my point is, it is up to your imagination as to what you want to use to be able to address this debt. But what do I mean as it relates to velocity banking? Just to restate or reiterate what that looks like, as income comes in, it traditionally goes into your checking account. So it will continue to do that. But the thought process is, as your income comes into your checking account, you immediately put it on some type of debt tool. And from that debt tool, you're going to pay bills. But what ends up happening is the cash flow left over, instead of it normally sitting in your checking account, maybe going to savings, that cash flow ends up living on that line of credit. And what ends up happening is it drops that balance down to the lowest point. Today's example is a lady by the name of Jackie. And Jackie had reached out to me. She's 42 years old, if I'm not mistaken. 42 years old. And she had just gotten her first position home equity line of credit. She owns a home that is worth, I believe it was $320K. So she has a home that is worth $320,000, and she has a mortgage with a balance on it of $130,000. Well, when she went to go get her first position home equity line of credit, and some of you who have one or in the process of getting one, sometimes the bank says, hey, you can have a line of credit, but we need to throw in more debt. And so what they forced her to do was add $50,000 of, and it ended up being a combination of different credit cards. They said, hey, if you throw in, because I think that impacts her DTI, if you throw in this $50,000 in credit card debt, we can give you a first position home equity line of credit for $180,000. And that's what she did. So she's in the process of using that $180,000 first position home equity line of credit. Well, in the midst of paying off the mortgage, and in the midst of paying off this $50,000 of debt, her cash flow increased. Her cash flow increased to approximately, I want to say it's about $2,700 a month, which is pretty significant. And so this is her current profile. I've got $180,000 first position home equity line of credit. I have cash flow of about $2,700, and now I'm ready to go. In my mind, I see no problems here, but I got a call. And what I realized was, as it relates to how most people do velocity banking, again, they think that, hey, when my income comes in and it goes onto this debt tool, all I have to do is pay my bills. And because my cash flow is still sitting in my checking account, I must be doing velocity banking. And that is not true. So in Jackie's case, she really thought she was following the process. She was pretty confident that what she was doing was right, meaning she felt as though she was following this trend. And it is, income goes into my checking account, goes on to my first position home equity line of credit, I pay bills, and that cash flow ends up living on the debt tool. What she was actually doing was simply debt consolidation. Her income comes into her checking account as normal, but then what ends up happening is she paid off a few debts. She paid off the credit card debt, and she added that credit card debt to the home equity line of credit. But what's happening from her checking account? She's just simply paying the minimum payments on the remainder of her debts. So what happens is her cash flow is just sitting in her checking account. So in essence, she has done nothing different. Well, I take that back. She has done something different. And that was she consolidated her debt. She consolidated her mortgage. She consolidated those credit cards into this line of credit. But now the balance on this line of credit needs to be addressed. So if you're truly doing velocity banking, how do you address the debt on the line of credit? What are the steps that you take? And so how does velocity banking traditionally work? And again, this is one of those visuals where I think this says it really, really well. And that is, as you start to eliminate debt using your debt tool, your cash flow starts to increase. And as your cash flow increases, you become almost, I'll call it, impervious or resistant to whatever interest might look like. So it really almost doesn't matter what the interest rate is as you are eliminating the debt and as the cash flow continues to get larger. You end up becoming quite powerful in being able to eliminate debt over time. So therefore, whether the interest rate is 5%, 6%, 10%, 12%, as it grows and becomes variable, because the debt is being eliminated so quickly, it almost doesn't matter. And what we cannot forget about is the other incidentals, meaning because you're using a first position home equity line of credit to eliminate debt, and you're probably using a credit card to pay all of your debt, don't forget about the cash back and the rewards that you also receive in this process. So I think this is a pretty good representation of what velocity banking is supposed to be. And so and what that ultimately means is you have to identify, where is your leverage located? Do you have a previous employer retirement account that you can leverage and use? Do you have a credit profile that will put you in a position to where you can have some type of line of credit? And how are you leveraging or using that debt tool? Are you able to get multiple uses out of the same dollar? And last but not least, as you start to pay off that debt and that cash flow increases, then what? What are you doing with it? What's the goal? What is the point? What is the purpose? And so with Jackie, it pretty much looked like this. And again, she has great income. She's got about $7,000 of income coming in, and that income goes straight into her checking account, and she's paying expenses. She got this first position home equity line of credit, and I think it's a principal. The principal and interest payment on that line of credit is about $993. $993 a month. So as her income comes in, she's paying her regular expenses. She's already paid off the mortgage, already paid off the credit card. Now the objective is just simply to pay off the line of credit, and she's paying just the payment that is due and is wondering, why is my HELOC not going down? Why is it not moving? Well, it's right here. She's got about $4,300 in debt that she's paying, and she's got cash flow of about $7,000. But where is this $2,700 going? This $2,700 at this moment is going right back into her checking account. And so what I wanted to show is, sweetheart, I want you to jump over to the other side of the board, because what I want to show you is I want to show you how her HELOC is performing based off this strategy. Meaning, if currently she's putting...
No.
Okay, no, you stay here.
Okay.
So what she's currently doing is she's taking this $993 a month, I'm going to call it roughly $1,000, and she's putting it towards the line of credit. And she's expecting to see movement on that line of credit based off that $1,000 a month. So what I want to show you is how's that actually performing inside of our HELOC? What is happening mathematically inside the HELOC that either is or isn't helping the story? And so now, you can switch over to the HELOC, and this is just a simple HELOC calculator. This is not anything special. And what's happening is, again, she has a $180,000 balance on her line of credit. The interest rate on that line of credit is 8.67%. And what I'm showing here is the current cash flow as the HELOC is experiencing it. Meaning, yeah, she brings home $7,000, but right now she is only paying the $993 a month into the HELOC. So from the HELOC's perspective, the expenses might as well be all the way up to that $993, because what's being experienced inside the HELOC is only $1,000 difference. Okay, $993, I'm rounding up, so it's only $1,000 difference. So if I'm only putting, if I have a $180,000 HELOC and I've got only $1,000 going into that line of credit, what does this performance look like over time? So let's calculate it. Well, what the data says is it's going to take well over 360 months to pay off this line of credit. But let's look at the detail. Let's view the report. So if I was to view the report, and I'll zoom in on some of this stuff, but the piece I want to connect you to, is this. Notice, get bigger, get over, make it a little bit smaller. There we go. Okay. What I want you to notice is, again, the balance is $180,000. And I know the pen is kind of in the way, but the balance is $180,000. She's got a $7,000 payment and $6,000 in expenses. Her interest is not just $993. It's a compounding issue, meaning in month one, it's $993. But if she pays $993, what's happening is there's a compounding effect that is causing the interest to steadily increase. So if you notice, the balance on this line of credit is not getting smaller. It's continuing to get larger, which means she no longer has a line of credit. Let's say, I don't know what month this is. Let's call it month 20. So at let's go month 24, 2 years. So at month 24, she no longer has, didn't want to do that. She no longer has a HELOC that was worth $180,000. She now has a HELOC that's sitting somewhere around $190,000 because she's only been making the minimum payments. So if she continues down this path, she's in trouble. So what should she do? Sweetheart, if you jump over to the other side. So what should she do in this case? Well, in this case, she should be simply following the strategy, the velocity banking strategy. And I know it seems difficult. I know it seems like it's almost an unrealistic expectation that, you know what, just because I make $7,000 a month, you're telling me all $7,000 is supposed to go on to this line of credit? And that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying as your income goes in, it goes on to this line of credit that is open-ended. And what ends up happening is you no longer have a home equity line of credit payment that you have to make. So you only have to focus on the additional expenses. And in her case, the additional expense is about $4,300. So, okay, I put all of my income, all $7,000. When I put $7,000 onto a home equity line of credit that has a balance of $180, what does that do? It drops the balance down to what, $193? And so when I pay the $4,300 in expenses out of that line of credit, the balance creeps back up. And I get it. We don't all make payments. We don't all pay our bills one time a month. So throughout the month, that balance is just creeping up. But when she originally puts her income onto this line of credit, it's now sitting at the absolute lowest point of the period, of the month. And how is interest accrued on a line of credit? In most cases, the interest is accrued on a daily basis. So if I put all of my income on day one of the month, that means that on month one, I'm at that $193,000, which is at the lowest point on that HELOC that I could hope for. But on the 10th, I pay my cable bill. On the 11th, I pay my mortgage, or I pay my electric bill. As I continue to pay bills, the balance starts to creep up. But I am still accruing the least amount of interest possible at that point. And so what ends up happening is this $2,700 in cash flow ends up sitting on this line of credit. So at the end of the month, I don't have a balance of $180,000. I have $2,700 less on that line of credit, which means I'm creating room, which means I'm accruing less interest, which means my line of credit isn't continuing to get bigger. Why? Because I'm following the strategy. So, sweetheart, if you jump over to the HELOC calculator again. So if she was actually following the strategy, what would this look like? Well, it wouldn't be just $7,000 going in, because that's correct. The monthly expenses are $4,300. So if the monthly expenses are $4,300 and we calculate the line of credit, what ends up happening is now, if you can see by this visual here, it takes approximately it's in the way. There we go. It takes approximately 93 months to pay off this line of credit. And if we look at the report, the detail, you will then see that as the cash flow sits on this line of credit, notice how the line of credit continues to drop. Notice how it starts at $180,000, but as that cash flow between the interest and the charges being made, that cash flow starts to drop that line of credit like a rock. And so what ends up happening is it takes ultimately, just scrolling all the way down here to the bottom, 93 months to pay off this line of credit. Why? Because we're following the strategy. Now, here's the piece. But what if an emergency happens? What if a hurricane comes through and we need to all of a sudden, State Farm ends up kicking us off of our insurance and we end up having to replace our roof on our own? Well, hopefully you would have built enough room inside this line of credit that you can do that. How does that impact a vehicle like this? Well, ultimately what that means is it doesn't mean I have lost the line of credit. It means that maybe now my balance has changed. And now instead of it taking 93 months to pay off this line of credit, it might be 120 months. But that's way better than 360. This now becomes a vehicle that I can leverage and use.